I'm not particularly enamored of the British royalty, but I have always admired Queen Elizabeth's steadfastness as a young girl during World War II, when, at her insistence, she trained as a mechanic and served in the Women's Auxiliary Branch of the British military. And while I didn't watch a lot of the coverage after her death this past fall, as the newsreels played, I was struck by how seldom we see the full span of a human life unfold. It was not just the fullness of her years, but that so much of it had been captured on film and now replayed as I witnessed a life in retrospect. The babe in arms, the carefree child not yet in line for the throne, the earnest young woman, only 14 herself, as she reassured children separated from their parents during the Blitz. The wedding, both of them so young, but that was when people used to get married. The young mother, all so familiar until only 25 years old, a queen. Then the long years slowly accumulate as we watch her gradually grow older before our eyes. The tragedies and triumphs of a human life, some unique to a queen, but others shared by many of us. Queen Elizabeth was born the same year as my mother, who lived to 94. But of course, I was not there for the first 30 years of my mother's life and have only a few photos and a handful of family stories, not endless hours of news footage. In the public eye, we often see celebrities, mostly young and beautiful, a few brave souls showing aging faces to the camera, if the camera still cares, which usually it doesn't, having moved on to the new crop of young and beautiful. We may see age in our senators, presidents, justices, mostly men, but seldom did we know them in their youth. We get fragments and pieces, rarely the whole. I was moved by seeing the full arc of a human life, both ordinary and extraordinary. But I think it was Elizabeth's very ordinariness that filled the streets to mark her passing. From the moment we are born, we are getting older. As children, we are chomping at the bit for the next birthday. 8.5, we say, with missing front tooth. Almost 15, with puberty turning our young lives upside down. We can't wait for the next milestone. I remember how eager I was for my first real job, not babysitting or paper route. And typical for my generation, I couldn't wait to move out and live on my own. In retrospect, my hurry to work and pay rent mystifies me. But at the time, independence was the clarion call. From the moment we are born, we are growing older. With gleeful anticipation in childhood, oblivious celebration in midlife, and a mixture of gratitude and apprehension in our latter years. Meanwhile, our youth-obsessed culture alternately ignores and belittles the gifts and challenges of our aging minds and bodies. Like so many other biases we live with, ageism is so pervasive as to be almost invisible. It is the water we swim in. A common reaction is to deny we are aging. Personally, I have given this one a good run for its money. I come from a long-lived family, eat well, get plenty of exercise, and have strong social connections. So no worries, eh? You'd think my recent round with cancer might have put that lie to rest, but as I gradually and gratefully reclaimed my sense of wellness, I once again took up my somewhat tattered cloak of youthful invincibility. Unrecognized, but just below the surface, was the sense that if I did all the right things, I would be magically protected and could slide into old age relatively unscathed, like my mother and her mother before her. I didn't even realize that I had slipped back into denial until that particular bubble burst last month with a diagnosis of osteoporosis. Who, me? Yes, me. And quite possibly others in this small congregation. And taken together, we would doubtless read like a train wreck. Diabetes, heart disease, dementia, vision, hearing, and mobility challenges, arthritis, tendinitis, bad backs, stiff hips, creaky shoulders. The list is long. And if you turn on the TV or go online, someone's probably willing to sell you something to turn back the clock. But often as not, what they're selling is denial, usually with models 20 years younger than those likely affected by the depicted affliction. Nobody can sell ageism like good old Wall Street. As Bob Dylan, now in his 80s, so sweetly sang when he was 25, "May we stay forever young." My generation, and to some extent my parents' generation, have been the beneficiaries of extraordinary medical advances that have extended life and eased many of the burdens of age. Cataract surgery is now a common rite of passage. Hip replacement, not quite routine, but saving many from crippling pain. Heart bypass surgery and stents, adding years of healthy life. These are enormous blessings, along with drugs to lower blood pressure, control diabetes, fight cancer, and yes, manage osteoporosis. All of which have the potential to extend our ability to lead longer and more active lives. It is also true that we age at varying rates. Lifestyle, genetics, luck, and like everything else in America, race and income all play a role, not only in how long we live, but how healthy we are as we age. But ultimately, time will have its due. We're all in the same boat, growing older. It's just that some boats are leakier than others. If we are lucky, we will grow old. What exactly that brings can vary widely, and how we view and accommodate the changes of age is deeply influenced by culture. In Hawaii, attitudes are strongly influenced by Asian and Polynesian cultures, which tend to respect and venerate age. I spend time in California, and the contrast is startling. In Hawaii, it's common to see people of quite advanced age still shopping at the grocery or waiting for the bus. Ordinary stuff. It is the exceptional person who will be running a marathon when they're 85, and more power to them. But most of us would like to still be part of our communities and able to go about the simple tasks of life. A recent church newsletter said that Faith Action for Community Equity, FACE, in which we are partners, had been chosen for a pilot project based on the Japanese concept of ibasho, which recognizes elders as valuable resources and active participants in their communities. What would it be like if we, as a congregation, chose to honor our elders, our kupuna? Our young people are our future, but our old people are the source from which we draw. Who are we if we are in such a rush to move forward that we forget those who came before? One of my favorite depictions of old age, and there aren't many to choose from, is the grandmother in the animated film Coco. In the film, she is clearly fragile, in a wheelchair, with both memory and eyesight failing. But rather than being the focus of our sympathy, she's a central character to both the story and the family. I love that she's not Superwoman, and yet she still matters. And it is one of the kindest portraits of dementia that I have ever seen. For many of us, this is the greatest fear, the loss of so much that we consider essentially human, knowing, remembering, expressing. In the final years of her life, my mother slowly slipped into dementia, which in her case was far more upsetting to us than to her. I have since read and reflected a great deal on how we view ourself and the value of a human life. It is a cruel disease, but by yoking our humanity to our cognition, we risk dehumanizing those whose grasp on memory, language, and perception slackens for whatever cause. This too is a cultural bias. I have enough friends in their 80s and 90s to know that at 66, I am on the young side of old. And I am keenly aware that there are many areas in which old people, especially old white people, wield disproportionate political power. But it is also true that we become increasingly invisible as we age. As in all cases of those who are marginalized by the larger culture, the first step to being viewed as fully human is to give voice to our lived experience of aging. So what if nobody wants to know? That's how it always is at the beginning. We need to find and reclaim language for the changes that accompany aging. Pretending that 80 is the new 60 erases the rich complexity and challenge of being 80. It is little different from passing in one's sexual or racial identity. I want all people to be celebrated for who they are in the full richness of human life. Of all the myriad identities that we wear, Age is both the most universal and most fluid. We were all once children, teens, young adults. Those of us who are lucky enough to have life receive the gift of aging. No easy gift, it's true. But as is always true, it is the companions that make the journey. And it is a blessing and a privilege to share the journey with you. Amen. Blessed be.